talk to you about sentences. But before we get into sentences, I want to make a proclamation. I proclaim that every time you encounter a sentence, and I mean every time you encounter a sentence, you want to identify its subjects and verbs. Why? Not for anything such as subject-verb agreement or number agreement or anything like that, but simply because those are the two most important ingredients in any sentence. Do you have a sentence without a subject? No. Even imperative sentences have an implied subject of you. Do you have a subject without a verb? No. Those are the two most important ingredients. Now, if ever you have trouble understanding what a sentence is saying, it's usually because you're having trouble identifying its subject and its verb, or at least the main one. Okay? Now, what do we call a collection of words with a subject and a verb in it? Now, you might be thinking, sentence, right? No, not a sentence. You might be thinking, phrase, right? Nope, not a phrase. A phrase is merely a collection of words. The real answer is, think Santa. A clause. Yes, a clause is any collection of words with a subject and a verb in it. So then the question then becomes, how many clauses can we have in a sentence? 1, 2, 3? A bajillion? That's actually a trick question. As many as you darn well please. In fact, the great Southern writer William Faulkner once wrote a sentence that was 4 pages long. And he did so using multiple clauses. Why? Because he could. Why do people read it? It's like Everest, because it's there. We are going to talk about clauses. We are going to talk about independent clauses. In fact, you must have at least one independent clause in order to make a sentence. And an independent clause is a clause that can be a sentence on its own. There will be dependent clauses. Now, dependent clauses cannot be sentences on their own, but they are clauses that begin with subordinating conjunctions like although, or because, or when, or if, or after. And then we'll also talk about relative clauses. Relative clauses are a strange kind of dependent clause that are used to describe or define nouns. Right? These are the clauses that begin with who, or whom, or that or which, sometimes even when or where, right? Sometimes even in which, of which, by which, through which, about which. Now, the first type of sentence that I'd like to talk about is quite simply called the simple sentence, which is one independent clause. Now, English is what is known as a subject-verb language. In fact, in our simplest of sentences, the subject comes right next to the verb. The dog walks, the boy runs, the dog walks the boy. These are our simplest of sentences. But where people fall down is you actually can have other information in these simple sentences. Things like appositives, which are descriptive phrases, and prepositional phrases, which are phrases that begin with prepositions. Now, what's a preposition? A preposition is any word that shows relationship and position, or, as you might have learned in elementary school, anything a bunny can do to a bush. It can go through the bush, go around the bush, be by the bush, be on the bush, by in the bushes, be above the bushes, go across the bush, go beyond the bush, go past the bush. Maybe it was born in the bush, and so it would be of the bush. Maybe it's feeling cool and it's all about the bush. Maybe it's tired of beating about the bush. Maybe it's tired of beating around the bush. Maybe it's just tired. Okay? But each utterance of the bush, through the bush, by the bush, under the bush, with the bush, by the bush, under the bush, I'm just repeating myself at this point. Each one of those utterances of the bush is a prepositional phrase. And the reason I bring this up is prepositional phrases make life difficult for people when it comes to simple sentences. It means that people will sometimes have a difficult time figuring out what the subject of a sentence actually is. Take the following sentence. The car with its many shining wheels are pretty to behold. Now, what's the subject of this sentence? Well, there's a couple of nouns here. There's the car and there's the wheels. Now, I suck the verb as are, so it must obviously be the wheels, right? No, it's not the wheels. In fact, this is a subject-verb agreement error. Okay? The subject is the car. You see this phrase, with its many shiny wheels. That is what is known as a prepositional phrase. And here's the thing about prepositional phrases. Nouns in prepositional phrases are never subjects. In fact, what they are is called objects. To get technical, they are the object of the preposition, but you don't need to know that. They are objects. And here's the difference between a subject and an object. An object will never affect the verb. The subject will, but the object will never affect the verb. So if you see a prepositional phrase like with its shiny wheels, or under the dome, or beside Betty Rubble, know that no noun in that phrase affects the verb. And so the correction for this sentence is, the car with its many shiny wheels is pretty to behold. Is the verb. Alright, so watch out for those prepositional phrases. Now, we are going to continue this in the weeks to come, talking more about sentences. Today was simple sentences, but next week I plan on talking to you about compound sentences. In fact, I will show you guys my favorite piece of punctuation, and yes, indeed, I have a favorite piece of punctuation. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you next week.